What if the moments he goes quiet are not signs of losing you, but signs of loving you the right way? What if the silence you fear is actually the space where real attachment grows? We've been taught that love is loud, constant, and demanding. That if he truly cares, he'll text nonstop, check in endlessly, and never let you wonder. But the truth is more uncomfortable and far more powerful. A man who truly values you doesn't rush to fill every gap with words. He doesn't crowd your life to secure his place in it. Instead, he steps back, he watches. He gives you room to exist without him hovering, not because he's unsure, but because he is. This is the hidden psychology few talk about. The difference between emotional hunger and emotional strength, between attachment driven by fear and connection built on respect. Understanding this changes everything. Real love is often misunderstood because it does not always look like constant attention or emotional closeness. Many people grow up believing that love must be loud, visible, and continuously expressed to be real. Texts, calls, reassurance, and frequent check-ins are seen as proof of care. But mature love operates from a different place. When a man truly loves a woman, he often understands that love is not measured by how often he intrudes into her life, but by how much he respects her autonomy. Restraint becomes a sign of depth. Instead of needing to prove his feelings through constant presence, he trusts the bond enough to allow space without fear of loss. Restraint in love reflects emotional security. A man who is emotionally grounded does not panic in distance, nor does he use attention to control outcomes. He understands that attraction and connection thrive when both people retain their individuality. By not overwhelming a woman with constant communication, he allows her to remain in her own rhythm, her own world, and her own sense of self. This restraint is not indifference. It is confidence. It says he believes the connection is strong enough to exist without constant reinforcement. This kind of confidence can only come from genuine feeling, not from insecurity or fear of abandonment. There is also a deeper psychological layer to restraint. When emotions are intense, many men instinctively pull back to process them. Love makes people vulnerable, and vulnerability requires control to remain healthy. A man who feels deeply may choose silence or distance not to disconnect, but to regulate himself. He knows that acting from emotional overflow can lead to impulsive behavior, possessiveness, or dependency. By creating space, he protects both himself and the connection from becoming unbalanced. His restraint becomes a form of emotional discipline, a way to keep love grounded rather than reactive. Another reason restraint signals real love is that it prioritizes long-term stability over short-term comfort. Constant attention can feel good in the moment, but it often creates emotional reliance. Over time, this reliance can turn into pressure, expectation, and eventual resentment. A man who truly loves does not want to become the center of your emotional world because he knows that kind of dynamic eventually suffocates both people. Instead, he wants to be a part of your life, not the entirety of it. His restraint supports a healthier structure where love adds value rather than replaces inner stability. Restraint also reflects respect for a woman's strength. When a man sees a woman as capable, independent, and emotionally intelligent, he does not feel the need to monitor or manage her emotional state. He trusts her to handle her own life and emotions. By stepping back at times, he communicates that he does not see her as fragile or dependent on his constant presence. This respect is subtle but powerful. It allows the woman to feel trusted rather than managed, chosen rather than controlled. Many people confuse restraint with neglect because they associate love with emotional intensity rather than emotional consistency. But real love is consistent even when it is quiet. A man who loves deeply may not always be present in obvious ways, but he is steady in his actions, reliable in moments that matter, and respectful of boundaries. His silence does not come with manipulation, disappearance, or mixed signals. It comes with clarity, intention, and emotional maturity. This is an important distinction because unhealthy distance feels anxious and confusing, while healthy restraint feels calm and grounded. Restraint in love also creates space for desire to grow naturally. Constant access dulls appreciation. When someone is always available, their presence becomes expected rather than valued. By not being constantly present, a man allows room for longing, curiosity, and appreciation to develop. This is not a game. It is an understanding of human psychology. Desire thrives when there is space to feel, miss, and reflect. A man who loves deeply wants the connection to remain alive, not exhausted by overexposure. Ultimately, real love expressed through restraint is rooted in self-awareness and respect. It is not driven by fear of losing you, but by confidence in what exists between you. It allows both people to remain whole, independent, and emotionally balanced. This kind of love does not shout to be seen. It moves quietly, steadily, and with intention, and in its silence reveals a depth that constant noise never could. When a man truly values a woman, his actions are guided less by the need to protect his ego and more by the desire to protect her growth. This distinction is subtle but powerful. Ego-driven behavior seeks reassurance, control, and validation. It wants to feel important, needed, and irreplaceable. Love-driven behavior, on the other hand, prioritizes what allows both people to evolve into stronger, healthier versions of themselves. A man who loves deeply understands that if he places his ego at the center of the connection, the relationship will eventually become about his fears rather than mutual respect. So, he chooses a different path, one that may look like distance on the surface, but is rooted in care. Protecting a woman's growth means allowing her to remain connected to her own life, ambitions, and inner world. An ego-focused man may feel threatened by her independence, interpreting it as a lack of need for him. But a man who truly values her sees independence as strength, not danger. He understands that love should not shrink someone, it should expand them. By not demanding constant attention or emotional reassurance, he leaves room for her to focus on her passions, responsibilities, and personal development. His restraint is an acknowledgement that her identity does not exist to serve his emotional needs. This approach requires emotional maturity. It takes strength to resist the urge to insert oneself into every aspect of a partner's life. Many people confuse closeness with involvement, believing that being constantly present is a sign of commitment, but constant involvement often masks insecurity. A man who is secure in himself does not need to monitor, manage, or compete for attention. He trusts the bond and allows it to exist without interference. This trust communicates respect. It tells her that he believes in her choices, her values, and her ability to navigate life without being supervised or controlled. When a man protects a woman's growth, he also protects the future of the connection. Growth requires space. Emotional development, self-discovery, and resilience are cultivated in moments of independence. If he were to demand constant closeness, he would interrupt that process. Over time, this interruption could lead to stagnation, frustration, or loss of self. A man who truly loves does not want to be the reason she loses herself. He wants to be the one who supports her becoming more of who she is. Even if that means stepping back at times, he accepts it as part of loving responsibly. There is also a quiet humility in this kind of love. Ego-driven attachment often seeks dominance or reassurance of importance. Love-driven attachment accepts that both people are equals, each with their own path. A man who protects a woman's growth does not need to be the hero in every moment. He does not need to fix, guide, or lead her at every turn. He recognizes that her strength is not a threat to his masculinity, but a complement to it. This humility allows the relationship to remain balanced rather than hierarchical. This form of love also avoids emotional dependency. When someone's sense of worth is tied to being needed, they may unconsciously sabotage their partner's independence. A man who understands this dynamic consciously avoids becoming the emotional center of her world. He encourages her to maintain friendships, goals, and interests outside the relationship, not because he wants distance, but because he knows that emotional health comes from a diversified sense of fulfillment. By doing so, he ensures that the connection is built on choice rather than necessity. Protecting growth also means allowing difficult emotions to exist without immediately intervening. An ego-driven response might rush to soothe discomfort to maintain a sense of control. A love-driven response allows space for emotions to be processed naturally. A man who loves deeply trusts that she can handle her feelings without him rushing in to manage them. This trust strengthens her confidence and reinforces emotional resilience. It also keeps the relationship from becoming emotionally unbalanced, where one person becomes the regulator of the other's inner world. Ultimately, when a man protects a woman's growth, he is investing in something larger than momentary closeness. He is investing in a dynamic that can endure change, distance, and evolution. His love does not cage or consume. It supports, respects, and allows. By choosing her growth over his ego, He creates a foundation of trust, admiration, and long-term stability that cannot be built through control or constant reassurance. This is the quiet strength of real love, expressed not through possession, but through freedom and respect. Emotional space is often misunderstood because many people associate closeness with safety and distance with loss. From an early age, love is portrayed as constant togetherness, frequent communication, and uninterrupted attention. So when emotional space appears, it triggers anxiety and self-doubt, especially for women who have been taught that presence equals priority. But in mature male psychology, emotional space can actually be a sign of respect rather than disinterest. It reflects an understanding that love does not require constant intrusion to remain alive. Instead, it needs room to breathe. For many men, emotional space is how they maintain balance between connection and self-identity. When a man truly values a woman, he does not want to lose himself inside the relationship, nor does he want her to lose herself. He understands that emotional closeness without space can quickly turn into emotional pressure. Pressure leads to obligation, and obligation slowly erodes desire. By allowing space, he preserves the natural rhythm of attraction, where connection feels chosen rather than forced. This is not avoidance. It is intention. Emotional space also allows feelings to deepen rather than become overwhelming. When emotions are intense, stepping back gives a man time to process what he feels without reacting impulsively. Men are often socialized to manage emotions internally, through reflection rather than expression. Silence or distance becomes a way to sort through thoughts, align emotions with logic, and regain clarity. When this space is healthy, it is not accompanied by manipulation, confusion, or inconsistency. It is calm, steady, and grounded. The connection remains intact, just quieter. Respect plays a major role in this dynamic. A man who respects a woman's individuality does not assume entitlement to her time, energy, or emotional availability. He recognizes that her world does not revolve around him, just as his does not revolve around her. Emotional space communicates trust. It says he believes she can exist fully without constant reassurance from him. This trust strengthens the bond because it removes the need for control. When neither person feels monitored or possessed, the relationship becomes a place of freedom rather than obligation. Another reason emotional space signals respect is that it allows longing to exist naturally. Longing is not weakness. It is part of human connection. When two people are constantly present in each other's emotional space, appreciation dulls. Presence becomes expected instead of cherished. Emotional space creates contrast. It allows moments of absence to sharpen awareness of what is valued. A man who understands this does not fear being missed. He allows it, knowing that missing someone is part of sustaining emotional depth. Many women mistake emotional space for emotional withdrawal because they focus on external behavior rather than internal consistency. But a man who is respectfully creating space remains consistent in character. He does not disappear without explanation, become cold, or create insecurity through mixed signals. His values remain stable. His respect remains intact. The space is not used as leverage. It is simply part of how he maintains emotional health. This distinction is crucial because unhealthy distance creates anxiety, while healthy space creates calm. Emotional space also protects the woman from becoming emotionally over-invested too early. When a man constantly fills every emotional gap, it can accelerate attachment before trust and understanding have fully developed. By stepping back at times, he allows the connection to unfold naturally. This pacing protects both people from illusions and projections. It gives reality time to reveal itself. In this sense, emotional space is not withholding love, it is allowing love to mature rather than rush. There is also an element of self-respect in a man who values emotional space. He does not sacrifice his purpose, responsibilities, or inner structure to maintain constant closeness. He knows that a man without direction eventually loses credibility and attraction. By honoring his own space, he models balance. This balance indirectly invites the woman to honor hers as well. The relationship then becomes a meeting of two grounded individuals rather than an emotional fusion driven by fear of separation. Ultimately, emotional space is misunderstood because it challenges the idea that love must be constantly proven. In reality, love that needs constant proof is often rooted in insecurity. Love that is confident can afford quiet moments. When a man creates emotional space with respect, consistency, and intention, he is not pulling away. He is demonstrating trust, emotional maturity, and a desire for a connection that remains strong without constant reinforcement. In that space, love is not weakened. It is stabilized, deepened, and allowed to exist without fear. Masculine psychology is deeply connected to purpose, direction, and self-mastery, and this connection strongly influences how a man expresses love. For many men, identity is not built primarily through emotional exchange, but through action, responsibility, and progress. When a man is aligned with his purpose, he experiences internal stability. This stability allows him to love without desperation, fear, or emotional dependence. Instead of clinging to a relationship for validation, he approaches love from a grounded place, where connection complements his life rather than defines it. Self-mastery is the foundation of this mindset. It involves emotional regulation, discipline, and an awareness of one's inner world. A man who practices self-mastery understands his emotions but is not ruled by them. When he feels deeply for a woman, he does not immediately act on every emotional impulse. He pauses, reflects, and chooses responses that align with his long-term values rather than short-term emotional relief. This restraint can appear as distance or silence, but it is actually a sign of control and maturity. He is choosing not to let emotion override judgment. Purpose plays a critical role in how a man balances love and space. A man without purpose often seeks fulfillment through relationships, placing emotional pressure on his partner to fill internal voids. This dynamic can lead to dependency, possessiveness, and insecurity. In contrast, a man who is committed to his purpose does not look to a woman to complete him. He values her presence, but he does not abandon his mission to maintain constant closeness. His focus on purpose is not avoidance. It is a stabilizing force that allows him to show up as a stronger, more reliable partner. This orientation toward purpose also shapes how he views emotional availability. Instead of equating love with constant communication, he equates it with reliability, integrity, and consistency. He believes that being emotionally present when it truly matters is more important than being emotionally available at all times. This belief influences his behavior. He may step back to handle responsibilities, challenges, or personal growth, trusting that the connection can withstand temporary distance. His confidence in this reflects emotional security, not indifference. Self-mastery also protects the relationship from becoming chaotic or emotionally volatile. When emotions run high, many conflicts arise from impulsive reactions rather than thoughtful responses. A man who has cultivated self-mastery knows the damage caused by reacting without control. By stepping away to process emotions privately, he prevents unnecessary conflict and emotional harm. This internal regulation allows him to return to the relationship with clarity and calm rather than frustration or confusion. His silence, in this context, becomes a tool for maintaining emotional stability rather than a sign of withdrawal. Masculine psychology also values respect, both self-respect and respect for others. A man who respects himself does not overextend emotionally to gain approval or reassurance. He does not chase validation through constant attention. Instead, he maintains his standards and boundaries even when he cares deeply. This self-respect naturally extends to his partner. He does not seek to control her emotions or dictate her responses. He allows her the same autonomy he gives himself. This mutual respect creates a balanced dynamic where both individuals feel valued rather than consumed. Another aspect of self-mastery is the ability to tolerate uncertainty. Love involves risk, and risk involves uncertainty. A man who lacks self-mastery may try to eliminate uncertainty through constant reassurance or control. A man who has developed inner strength accepts uncertainty as part of connection. He understands that trust cannot be forced and that emotional bonds deepen through patience rather than pressure. This acceptance allows him to give space without anxiety, trusting that what is genuine will endure. Purpose and self-mastery also shape how a man handles longing. Instead of acting immediately on feelings of missing someone, he channels that energy into productive action. He builds, creates, and progresses. This does not diminish his feelings, it grounds them. By integrating love into a life of purpose, he prevents the relationship from becoming the sole source of meaning. This integration strengthens attraction and respect because it demonstrates that his life is full, stable, and intentional. Ultimately, masculine psychology prioritizes purpose and self-mastery because they create the foundation for healthy love. A man who is grounded in these principles loves without clinging, gives space without withdrawing, and remains consistent without being overwhelming. His behavior is not driven by fear or ego, but by discipline, respect, and long-term vision. This approach may be quieter than dramatic displays of affection, but it is far more enduring, allowing love to exist within a structure of strength, balance, and emotional integrity. Chasing validation in relationships often feels natural, especially when emotions are strong and attachment is forming. Many people believe that seeking reassurance, attention, or constant confirmation of feelings will strengthen the bond. In reality, it often does the opposite. When validation becomes something you chase, the connection subtly shifts from mutual desire to emotional imbalance. One person begins to seek, while the other becomes the source. This dynamic quietly erodes attraction, respect, and emotional safety over time. When a woman chases validation, she unintentionally signals uncertainty about her own worth. This does not mean she lacks value, but that her value feels externally dependent in that moment. Male psychology responds strongly to emotional signals rather than words. When a man senses that he is being leaned on for reassurance, approval, or emotional stability, pressure begins to form. Even if he cares deeply, that pressure can make the connection feel heavy rather than inspiring. Love thrives in freedom, not obligation. Validation, seeking also interrupts natural emotional flow. Instead of allowing feelings to grow organically, it forces constant checkpoints. Questions like, "Do you miss me? Do you still care?" Or, "Why didn't you reply?" may seem harmless, but they shift the focus from shared experience to emotional accounting. Over time, the relationship becomes about managing insecurity rather than enjoying connection. A man who initially felt drawn and may begin to feel monitored or emotionally responsible for maintaining reassurance, which dulls desire rather than deepening it. Calm presence, on the other hand, creates emotional gravity. When a woman is grounded, emotionally regulated, and focused on her own life, she becomes magnetic. She does not demand proof of affection because she trusts herself and the connection. This calmness communicates confidence without words. A man senses that her presence is a choice, not a need. That distinction matters deeply. Choice inspires respect. Need invites imbalance. From a psychological perspective, chasing validation often comes from fear of loss rather than love itself. Fear-driven behavior is reactive. It seeks immediate relief from discomfort rather than long-term stability. When a man feels that his attention is being used to regulate someone else's emotions, he may instinctively pull back, not because he does not care, but because he feels overwhelmed. This withdrawal then triggers more validation seeking, creating a cycle that weakens the bond further. Calm presence interrupts this cycle. When you remain steady regardless of his immediate level of attention, you create emotional safety. You are no longer reacting to every shift in energy. You allow space without panic. This does not mean indifference or emotional coldness. It means self-trust. You trust that what is real does not disappear because of silence, distance, or temporary shifts. This trust is deeply attractive because it reflects inner stability. Another important aspect is that validation chasing often places the man in a position of power without intention. When one person seeks reassurance and the other provides it, the emotional balance tilts. Over time, the provider may unconsciously feel superior or detached, while the seeker feels increasingly anxious. Calm presence restores balance. It removes the need for emotional bargaining. Both people stand on equal ground, choosing each other freely rather than negotiating emotional security. Men who are emotionally mature are especially drawn to calm strength. They recognize it as a sign of self-respect and emotional intelligence. A woman who does not chase validation shows that she has a full inner life. Her happiness is not dependent on constant attention. This makes her presence feel enriching rather than draining. Even when she is quiet, her energy remains strong. She does not disappear emotionally when he is not present, and that consistency builds trust. It is also important to understand that calm presence allows longing to work in your favor. When you do not rush to fill every silence with reassurance, seeking, space is created for reflection and appreciation. A man has time to feel your absence, to miss your energy, to recognize your value without being reminded. This is not manipulation. It is allowing natural emotional processes to unfold without interference. Chasing validation often comes from a good place, a desire to feel secure and connected. But true security comes from within, not from constant confirmation. When you anchor yourself emotionally, you change the entire dynamic. You stop asking to be chosen and start being someone who is chosen naturally. Calm presence does not beg for love. It allows love to rise toward it, drawn by steadiness, self-worth, and quiet confidence. True commitment is often misunderstood because it is not always loud, dramatic, or emotionally intense. Many people associate commitment with constant communication, frequent reassurance, and visible displays of attachment. But genuine commitment is revealed over time through consistency rather than constant contact. A man who is truly committed does not need to prove his feelings every day with words. His dedication shows up in patterns, reliability, and alignment between what he says and what he does. This kind of commitment is steady, not reactive. Consistency creates emotional safety. When a man is consistent, his behavior does not fluctuate wildly based on mood, convenience, or emotional impulse. Even if he is not always present, his actions remain predictable in a healthy way. He follows through. He respects boundaries. He remains emotionally aligned even during periods of distance. This reliability builds trust because it removes uncertainty. A woman does not have to guess where she stands when commitment is expressed through stable behavior rather than constant reassurance. Constant contact, on the other hand, can create a false sense of security. Messages, calls, and frequent check-ins may feel comforting, but they do not necessarily indicate long-term intention. Many people can maintain intense communication when emotions are high or circumstances are easy. But when life becomes demanding or emotions become complicated, those patterns often collapse. Consistency reveals commitment because it persists beyond emotional highs and lows. It remains intact when attention is not convenient. A committed man integrates the relationship into his life rather than centering his life around it. This integration shows maturity. He does not abandon responsibilities, values, or personal growth to maintain closeness. Instead, he ensures that the connection fits sustainably into his world. This approach protects the relationship from burnout. When commitment is rooted in structure rather than intensity, it has the strength to endure stress, distance, and change. Consistency also reflects respect. A man who respects a woman does not disappear and reappear without explanation. He does not create confusion through mixed signals. Even when he needs space, his behavior remains aligned with his character. He communicates when necessary, acts with integrity, and avoids emotional manipulation. This kind of respect is a clear indicator of commitment because it shows that he values her emotional well-being, not just his own comfort. Another important aspect of commitment through consistency is patience. A man who is truly committed does not rush the connection to secure outcomes. He allows trust to build naturally. He understands that real bonds deepen over time through shared experience, not forced intensity. This patience allows the relationship to grow on a solid foundation rather than emotional urgency. It also gives both people the opportunity to observe each other clearly without illusion or pressure. Consistency also becomes visible during conflict or uncertainty. Anyone can be present when things are easy. Commitment is revealed when circumstances challenge closeness. A committed man does not withdraw permanently when things become uncomfortable. He may take space to process, but he returns with clarity. He remains engaged in resolution rather than avoidance. His actions demonstrate that the connection matters even when it requires effort. It is also important to recognize that consistency does not mean sameness. Life naturally involves cycles of closeness and distance. Work, stress, and personal growth can temporarily shift attention. Commitment remains visible through how these shifts are handled. A man who is committed adjusts without abandoning. He adapts without disappearing. His core behavior remains grounded even as circumstances change. When commitment is expressed through consistency, it allows a woman to relax into the relationship. She does not need to chase reassurance or interpret silence as rejection. She trusts the pattern rather than the moment. This trust fosters emotional security and reduces anxiety. The relationship becomes a place of stability rather than constant evaluation. True commitment also respects individuality. A man who is consistent does not demand constant emotional access. He understands that closeness does not require constant presence. By allowing space while remaining reliable, he demonstrates confidence in the connection. This balance between independence and reliability strengthens attraction and deepens respect. Ultimately, true commitment is not measured by how often someone reaches out, but by how they show up over time. It is revealed in alignment, reliability, and integrity. When a man is consistent, his love does not need to announce itself loudly. It is felt through stability, trust, and the quiet assurance that he remains present in meaningful ways, even when he is not always physically or emotionally close. In the end, understanding this hidden psychology changes how love is interpreted and experienced. What looks like distance is often discipline. What feels like silence is often stability. And what appears to be ignoring is sometimes restraint rooted in respect. Real love is not built on constant reassurance, emotional chasing, or fear of loss. It is built on self-mastery, purpose, and consistency. When a man truly loves, he does not try to own your attention or control your emotions. He trusts the connection enough to give it space, and he values you enough to let you remain whole. When you stop measuring love by noise and start recognizing it through calm, respect, and steady presence, you step into a deeper kind of power, one where love is chosen freely, not demanded, and where your strength is not threatened by silence, but affirmed by it.